Welcome, everybody. Today, I have here with me Ward 8 Councilmember-Elect Mike Austin. He's just coming off a strong Ward 8 straw poll victory in first place, leading the pack of a number of candidates, Sheila Bunn, Trayon White, as well as Salim Adolfo. Today, we're just going to be talking about a few issues pertaining to DC. A few things that might be, on a national level. But I just wanted to give you all an opportunity to sit down and actually hear what Mike Austin has to say, and we can deep dive and have some conversations and hear if you would like for him to be your candidate of choice. So first and foremost, I'm just going to go ahead and ask Mike to introduce himself a little bit more, tell the people something that they don't know about you or that you do want them to know about you.
First, thank you for having me. I appreciate, sitting down to talk with you. I respect your political mind, so I know we're going to have some good conversations because we haven't always agreed on everything, but we respected each other's opinions and had some spirited debates over the years. So looking forward to having some good conversations today. But for those, I am Mike Austin. I am, attorney, fourth generation Washingtonian, live in Congress Heights. I've been an ANC commissioner, ANC chair, various roles around the ward, serving on 3 boards here in the ward. I'm on the far southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative Board, serving on the board for CC Prep, an adult charter workforce board, and also serving on the board for UPO, which runs the PD Green Center and a lot of other services across the district. But outside of those roles and, working on the, hospital UMC, just helped close that. Worked there for the last almost 10 years, really about 8.5, 9 years. Working there, stabilizing things over there, working through some issues they had, years ago. And, really have been privileged to serve Ward 8 in a few capacity. Outside of all that, and it is, an exciting time for the ward. It's unfortunate that we are having an election, but ultimately, been engaging a lot of folks across the ward, and they're excited for the possibility of some new representation downtown and making sure that we can hold the mayor and the other council members' feet to the fire for, some neglect of the ward and also prioritizing their wards over our ward and make sure they have somebody downtown that can fight for them and fight with them, and we can lock arms to, make sure that we get our fair share. And I'll just end with this, that I am committed to not just things being equal, but being equitable. And I think that's a big mistake and a change in thinking that we have to get to. When we talk about the share and allocation of resources for Ward 8, we should not be getting equal anything to Ward 3 or, Ward 2 or 1 or 4 for that matter. It should be equitable. And so we're going to be pushing for a larger piece of the pie and also putting forth some big policies that would enhance the lives of our families and enhance the lives of our people who have been left behind, and make sure that we can close that achievement gap for our young people. So that's what I'm about. That's what I'm about, doing the work, rolling up the sleeves. I'm not the sexiest candidate. I'm not the loudest candidate. I'm not but I'm the one that's going to work the hardest.
Thank you for that. Full transparency, I know you mentioned that, we've had our disagreements in prior and past. So just for everybody who is watching, just for the integrity of the conversation, I have worked with Mike during my time in the mayor's office as well as in DC Council. So just so everybody understands, I have had a prior relationship. So I want you all to keep that in mind as we have that discussion. And I want you all to know that moving forward, that is something that I would like to see from the overall community when we have these type of discussions, so we can have that integrity on the front side. But without further ado, first conversation that I do want to have with you, and I think it's the biggest, hottest topic in the city right now. I don't know if they asked you all this question. No, I'm sure they pretty much have asked you all every single time at these candidates forum. DC, Washington Redskins, or shall I say the Commanders now, we are on the brink of a new stadium at the RFK site. There has been some pushback as of late from council members as it relates to the mayor and how the deal is proposed. And I would just like to hear your thoughts. I kind of have my thoughts on it, but I want the people to hear what you have to say as it relates to the RFK Stadium. Do you think it should be built? Do you think it should be pushed back on? Should they make any adjustments to the bill? Just how do you think about what's being approached?
Yeah, so it's just me. We just gonna have a candid conversation, right? So I'm gonna take off my debate style hat. I think it's a good opportunity, but not in its current form. And when we talk about how it looks, so it's okay. $1 billion here $2-something billion from the commanders. That is, it's a big investment from them, but it's also, I'm not running to represent the commanders. And so, I'm running to represent the residents of Ward 8 and $1 billion of our budget. And it's a capital budget, not our operational. So I do have to clarify that. So it can only go to capital projects. That still is a sizable investment of any dollars, whether it's capital or operational. And it does present an opportunity where, 40,000 jobs, a lot of jobs. The problem is that without any strong agreements in place, we run the risk of making the mistakes that we've made in the past. And those mistakes too often are not fulfilling the promise of what the project is. And so too often we see that jobs are being filled by people from Philadelphia, Virginia, West Virginia, and all across up and down the East Coast. And that may be part of the union agreement, it may not be, but also just we do not have folks who are connected to the opportunities that live here and they're living right next to it. And so, I would love to, at least have an opportunity to, dig into the agreement as a council member to fight on behalf of Ward 8 residents. And what I mean is making sure that one thing we do have a strong project labor agreement with our union partners. But most importantly for me is making sure that we have additional opportunities for our Ward 8 residents that we can start to prepare for right now, because the project as it's slated is not supposed to start until 2030. That means we have 5 years to start to get folks prepared and trained up for these opportunities. I think that a stadium of this size will have a lot of jobs that are outside of just construction. We can make sure that the parking infrastructure goes to our residents. I've talked about the revenue from the parking going to fund Ward 7 and 8 after school programming or youth programming, or doing something where we are being innovative in how we use the dollars that are being invested.
And when you say coming online 2030, are you talking about the start and build, or we'll have a finished product? We should be having a finished product by 2030.
They should be close to getting the current one demolished and really starting to go vertical by 2030. So, so we got 5 years right now to prepare. And so that's still, a long time to really get folks ready to go, iron out all the details and everything. That is a good amount of time to make sure that we get the agreement done, and make sure that it prepares our people. I don't want to see, if it's not a true economic impact for our people, I would probably say it's just a stadium. It serves us no good. I love the Commanders. I'm a huge football fan. I don't think the two go hand in hand. People say, if you don't want to bring them to the city, you don't love the team, and that's just not true. You can love the team.
I think I've heard some similar sentiments as it relates to people kind of approaching it from a very dichotomous kind of outlook. To your point, is like either you support it or you don't support it. I have a tendency to more so lean towards you when it comes to this conversation, and just being very strategic around how we're approaching it, because I think with everything going on federally, as well as, the attacks on home rule, and for everybody who is not here in DC, that's just us being able to have our legislative and mayoral autonomy as it relates to being a municipality as a body. And so with the idea of the project, I do think it's a great opportunity. But I think, like, even when you talk about the jobs, I think a lot of people, when they talk about the jobs, my biggest question is always, are the jobs going to be available? Are they going to be jobs that pay enough to actually allow somebody to live and thrive in the District of Columbia as it continues to move forward? Because as we continue to move forward, and which kind of segues into the discussion that I wanted to have as it relates to when we talk about the stadium, one of the big discussions about being in this big, beautiful city is about the affordability. And so it's like with the stadium and all of these amenities, my thing is like, those things are kind of attached to each other. And so as we bring in all of these new infrastructures, which I'm not necessarily against, how we measuring and mapping that out with the new AI that may be, pressing on the labor industry, and just all of these different dynamics. So my question to you is, with the stadium coming in and all of the new amenities, how do you plan on approaching the affordability discussion as it relates to your residents in Ward 8?
Yeah, it is, man, it's expensive. Man, it is, per capita, we're one of the most expensive cities in the country. It is, it's not quite New York. It is just up there, right? They also have, much larger, much bigger population. But
yeah, we close.
Yeah, it's just, it's up there. And, then wages just don't keep up with the demand of, the housing costs. And it comes down to like two things. One, we're not building enough housing to keep up with the people that we have. And then two, we also have to find some ways to help people make more money, because even if you're renting right now, and it is hard to, if you want to own a home, to get into, home ownership. And so, and then we don't have enough, our housing stock is low. And so, it is both sides is very difficult to make sure that we have the demand. We don't always have the supply. So, that's why the demand is even higher, because we don't have the supply to keep up with the number of people who, one, either want to move here, or two, try to keep them here so they can maybe move to somewhere else, or stay in the city, because people do want to stay within the city lines, which I appreciate. Folks who are fighting to stay in the city. The family's been in the city, they want to stay in the city, they go to school, they went to school, they went to work, got a good job, they want to stay and own something in the city at some point, or just stay in the city even if they have no plans on owning. And so, one, I would say we need to increase the density of what we do have. When we're building market rate units, or building, townhomes and, different complexes, we need to make sure that we're increasing the density of what we do have. We're restricted in certain ways, right? So we already have the Height Act. And so we can't build skyscrapers. So that limits us. And so we have to make our buildings even more dense so that we can put more units in there. We also have to make sure that it doesn't take as long to build the units that we're trying to build, so that, one, we can grow our economy to, attract new residents as well, but also house the residents that we have here, because it's kind of like a two-headed thing. We got to continue to keep raising money and keep having more people to tax. But we also got to protect those who are here and who've been here through some rough times. So yeah, we got to increase the density a lot. And also, I would try to find new programs to making even more affordable units in the city, tweaking the inclusionary zoning program to add more deeply affordable units so that our people can afford them. And also trying to find other ways to, help folks transition over to home ownership. And so, I have these conversations often about what programs work, what doesn't work. I mean, HPAP is our primary tool, and then we have the Housing Production Trust Fund. That's been at 100 million for a few years now. Maybe it's time to increase that some more. I think the mayor did that a few years ago. So, it may be time to explore some other options that may, increase our density, but also increase our capacity to bring more affordable units into the city.
So you mentioned inclusionary zoning and the density and the deep levels of more affordable units. I don't know if you want to touch on it, but for me, I think, or let me ask you this. Are there any plans or suggestions that can be proposed by whether it be the council or the mayor to circumvent the AMI issue? And I believe that that's an issue. And you correct me if I'm wrong, because the way I understand it, or the way it has been explained to me, is that when we factor in and create this formula for affordability, because DC is not and does not have statehood.
Pause it for 1 second.
Yep. So yeah, the AMI situation, I think, is a very interesting one, just to navigate in terms of us being clustered in with the whole metropolitan area as a whole. Like, did you have, or do you have any, like, I guess, propositions that can be put forth to kind of address that when we talk about the affordability issue? Because as we know, our neighbors over here in Arlington and Fairfax are like top 3 richest counties in the country. And that heavily lifts our affordability and the rate at which it, happens drastically higher for our residents here in DC.
Yeah, and the same thing with PG County. One of the richest counties in the country. This area is just expensive, and so definitely, need a new way to evaluate and make our housing more affordable. I can't say for sure what that answer would be. I know that I watch all the hearings, I listen to the housing experts, and I haven't heard too many viable solutions outside of AMI being the kind of barometer of I guess the barometer of what we're going to use for, our index. Because it does have to be some kind of index based on people's income. I don't know what a better solution would be. I don't know. Now, everybody who's chaired the housing committee has tried to tackle this issue. The council puts forth some bills. Some are good. Some are, not. We can't solve this crisis. And it's not just going to be increasing the density. It's not that. And it's not just, it's going to require, like, to your point, more, a better litmus test of what, each category is. So if you make $100,000, and you have 2 kids, well, you are kind of equal to somebody making, let's say, 75,000, and no kids, right? Or if you're making 75,000 with 2 kids, you kind of, because the cost of children is expensive, the cost of childcare, and if you can't get this subsidy for your childcare, so you just continue to have all these expenses that need to be evaluated and put into a system, so we can figure out who can who should qualify for some of these units. But yeah, it's going to require probably more affordable units in the IZ program too. 10%, 20%. I mean, maybe we probably need to increase in some of these properties to um, keep our folks here, because some of these units get up to upwards of $3,000 for $3,500, and that's a lot of money every single month. You talking about every paycheck that's $1,750 you have to set aside, and I mean, unless you're clearing, $2,500 a month, I mean, you got groceries, you got car note, you got cell phone. Yeah, I mean, you got a little bit of cable, a little bit of, maybe you go out to eat once or twice. Man, you start to blow through that pretty quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Don't gotta Uber nowhere because you gotta
yeah, like,
Uber somewhere. It's over with. That's a whole nother 50, $60.
yeah, man, it becomes ridiculous. You talk about parking, Uber. I mean, just a little bit of groceries. Maybe you go see a movie. I mean, we ain't talking about living a lavish life. We're just talking about just the basics to, go out here and make it. It gets to be really expensive. And then the other folks who even are earning more money, they living paycheck to paycheck too. So nobody's killing it out here. I think if we can, one, tighten it up for folks who are in the middle, right? So make that stronger, make it a little easier on them, and also make sure a lot easier for folks so who are at the lower end of our AMI scale, so that, they can afford more units too. And so that's where I'll probably be focusing majority of my attention. I mean, I'm sure we do have some high earners in Ward 8 in certain neighborhoods, but if we can strengthen that middle class a lot more and keep them here and make it more affordable for them, I would feel like we have some wins.
Yeah, I like that because there's a lot of conversations around affordability. And like, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this was to provide the opportunity to kind of have a little bit more in-depth discussion, because we joked about it earlier with the 2 minutes and you get used to answering 2-minute questions. And I really think it's unfair, not just to you, but to, politicos and people who are running for office, to have to answer these questions in such a short manner when we're dealing with a society with the level of complexity and issues that I think that we haven't even faced, or none of our predecessors have ever faced, because there's a lot of different solutions that have been put forth that I don't really think cut it, and that I don't really think address all of the different moving pieces. And I appreciate people for what they bring and offer to the table. And I appreciate for what, like you just said, like, I don't know that particular answer, but, I'll be here to kind of, help wade through some of that, because I'm always, trying to add value to some way and to some extent in that regard. But yeah, it's definitely hard for the people, man. And the people, I think, appreciate and are going to appreciate the fact that, you have a person who is able to think that all the way through and not just, say, well, yeah, it's going to be affordable and everything is going to be okay. Because, I think a lot of people are tired. More people are tired of just hearing, everything is going to be okay. If we do this, it's going to be okay. And you add an extra job, it's going to be okay. And I think, just working through the issues in a little more thoughtful manner is going to be helpful. But
There's one thing.
Yep, go ahead.
I think just to what you just said too. What I do believe is that when we increase our stock, our supply, then the demand will go down some. And so I do believe that we can bring in new, increase our supply that we even have available with, deeply affordable units for residents. Because right now it is extremely hard to, get projects done and get things to cut a ribbon. And so, it takes a long time, becomes, 2, 3, sometimes, 4-year process. And so for folks who are trying to stay here, say they're living in some subpar conditions, or, for folks who are trying to move, and it just becomes hard. And so and we're in a crisis. So I think the big picture would be some mixed use retail, the mixed use with, strong affordability covenants in place to, reference the AMI track, but also we have to we have to increase our supply a lot, because we're not able to keep up with the demand that we had. And folks are frustrated and hearing, like you said, oh, it's gonna be okay. No, we need to increase the supply of what we have. The stock is too low. That's why the demand continues to stay up, because a lot of the units we have in the city right now were built prior to 1976. So they're older units. They may have been remodeled some here and there, but they're still just older units. We had a heavy concentration of 4-unit apartment buildings. So, the newer ones, the large scale ones, the denser ones, it's kind of new. So we have gotten into in the last 10 years or so, maybe 15, but still we weren't this hustling and bustling city that maybe a New York was, or a Boston was, or a Philly was, but that they are, right? We have not been that very long. And I don't want to go too far off topic, but I mean, as you know, I mean, DC proper was a sleepy town kind of after, like, we didn't have all these amenities, and it kind of started with the anchor of our downtown area, being revitalized, and then folks even just hanging out after hours. We weren't always the
Hmm.
sexiest place to come and hang out. I mean, folks who lived here loved it and appreciated it, but people, for the most part, was coming to see the monument, the Capitol. They're going about their way, and so now people started to consider it as, oh, this can be my destination, to live.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that overall, now that we are on the top of people's minds and people want to come here, and so so we can, if they want to live here, we can tax them. That's money for the city, but we have to, like I said, increase the supply where we have to, one, house the people we have here now who want to stay here in the lines. Some people maybe moved out, right outside the lines, want to come back, so maybe they moved down PG County, but they want to come back. Okay. Two, so we can continue to have some other residents who want to stay in the city, or folks who live in other more expensive parts of the city that want to come on this side. I mean, everybody, they all want to live inside the city lines right now, so the demand is extremely high. And then just families that we have here that they got a 3-bedroom, I mean, a 2-bedroom, they want a 3-bedroom. All right, so it's just, yeah, it's tough, man. It is that's a tough committee, a committee I hope to be on, because they don't have the answers, and I'm hoping to listen to some of these proposals. And I read these white papers all the time from these think tanks and these experts, and some stuff makes sense, some stuff doesn't. But we got a lot of work to do to solve that one.
And can you tell, for the audience who may not necessarily be into all of the legalese, and for all you fancy, lawyers and attorney talk, what white papers are?
Okay, so these think tanks and these groups and these experts, they put together these ideas and proposals and do this research, and they'll list suggestions, and they're experts in their field, and so they will just do all the data. And I mean, we've been studied so much, so you can look at any of these groups. I mean, you have some that are very left-leaning and liberal. They have some that are more moderate and pragmatic, and it's various groups, but they all have some kind of agenda ultimately. But I think most are well-meaning. You can just tell the difference in the groups and all that. The and so you try to pull from both sides and see what you can glean from it. So what proposal are you suggesting? Which area of the tax law, the tax code can we reform? What of the housing code can we reform to make it more suitable for our people, and also so then we can ultimately turn that into some policy that will have some meaningful effects. So they just do the research, that's all, and that's their job, to just think of stuff and do the research. And they're sociologists, and they're architects, and they're behavioral scientists, and so they just study geography and how people move when they migrate, and the effects of TANF and SNAP, and how it affects grades. And I mean, they study all kind of things. So housing, education, I mean, then how all these categories intersect. And I mean, a lot of times we don't need papers to tell us what we already know. We ain't closed the achievement gap. People have still fallen behind. We have not made any real meaningful difference in affordable housing units. We are not, our public safety issues are persistent, and we still lead the nation, or still lead the city, in crime and unemployment, diabetes, and pre-morbidity, pre-mortality. And so we all these issues are challenges we have to address to give our folks a more suitable way of life, and a better way to survive and thrive in the city. So so I read. I'm really a policy nerd, and I love that stuff. But ultimately, these are our lived experiences, and so we need to address those challenges.
Thank you for that. I always want to give the audience something, because this is a teaching exercise as well. So get y'all some white papers, because the more, informed you are, the better you are at holding people accountable and not getting bamboozled, throughout the whole process. So
Get up.
Chat GPT gonna take everybody's job. God damn it.
research, you know.
We going up.